Good afternoon, everybody. It's Saturday, the 17th, and I'm about a day late getting this to you. It's been a busy week for us, and we appreciate your prayers. I'm coming to you from the back porch of my mother-in-law's house here in Indiana. So, wanted to produce this video in enough time. Hopefully, you get a chance to see it tonight and to think about these things before getting together in our simple churches tomorrow at 10 a.m. They're on campus. Again, the group that normally meets with me in the auditorium will collapse together with Scott and Tom's group. So you guys will be meeting in there, and I'll still be meeting with the Zoom at Noon group in follow-up and discussion to the teaching video here. So let me jump into it right away so that you guys can have time to watch this and to try to keep it short. Um, Let me share my sound here with you, and um, we'll take a look at it too. Again, just a second. Turn that off. I like to listen to New York Public Radio when I'm away. Reminds me of being at home. So the opera section is on WQXR today. Anyway, so here's Emma's new place. We got her settled in this past week. You can see her there in front of the house. She shares with Tina Burns. For those of you that you know, she's in the upstairs of the house, and you can see her room there on the left that she's getting settled in. Ames is a college town. Iowa State University is there. Emma will start working at the public library at the end of the month and is not very far away. Ames is about a town of 25,000 people, plus 25,000 more students when the school is on, so it's busy there now. And the Iowa State University is really kind of at the center of town, and the older part of the town where Emma lives is just to the east of that. And we get her car registered, and you see the Iowa plates on her car, so she's feeling like she's getting settled in pretty quickly. And we were able to get a lot done, even with the COVID crisis and numbers on the rise there too. So we'll be having to quarantine when we get back, as well as from the time here in Indiana where it doesn't seem as bad as it was in Iowa, but it's a lot of spread among young people right now who don't even know that they have it, but heard of a lot of cases in the church there that Emma will be part of. And that's the church where Build comes from. And resources like the First Principles and the leadership courses and the things that we're doing. Our partnership with the work in Albania and Kosovo and Ukraine, where I'm going, is rooted there in Ames, Iowa. So Emma's decision to go there is because we have a lot of contacts, a lot of history, a lot of friends, and it just made sense to be a place where she could go off on her own and get settled and new adventure off on our own in life, and then get prepared for starting graduate studies next fall at the University of Iowa, which is about somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5, 3 hours away, but a lot of that will be done online even while she's working. So continue to pray for Emma, and I'm sure she'll still connect with us via Zoom, probably on Thursdays, maybe on Wednesday nights for our prayer time. I have started this week in travel leading morning workshops for Antioch School students those are leaders around the world who are getting accredited degrees using Build resources, these church-based theological education resources like First Principles, like Identifying, Life to the Nth, leadership series courses, the kind of things I've been teaching in Patterson. And this week we began their virtual conference. So we're now connecting with leaders all over the world, and I happen to be leading the group from Europe and Africa. So we have leaders in two different time zones. Eastern Africa and West Africa, East Europe, West Europe, and we're meeting at the same time. But that means that I get up at 2 a.m. in the morning to get ready and lead a 1 hour Zoom workshop to introduce a resource like Life to the Nth or First Principles that they then can work on some of their projects that are needed to be assessed, kind of the tests that they are passing in order to get degree credit for work that they're doing in their churches. And so here you see the screenshot of leaders from France, Northern Africa. Joseph there is from Uganda, from his office. Grace, the woman that's being highlighted right there, is part of a church in Rwanda. There are guys from Burundi. Holger is there from um, Albania, and Serge is from Ivory Coast in West Africa. So it's a really unique experience this year, and in many ways we feel more connected than we are when we're in Ames, because so many of them are dealing with jet lag, or this is the new environment of the States. The weather is different. Here they're at home, just like you're at home and watching this, but yet you feel connected with someone around the world, and we're able to have a really focused and intense time. And you can see down here at the bottom, in the basement where Melanie and I were staying this last week, that's my studio. And so I'm running meetings 3 times a day, starting at 2 a.m. in the morning our time, 3 a.m. actually our time, getting ready about 2 a.m. But leading these guys through things that they're taking to their leaders and in their churches. And I just think, wow, if Paul had Zoom, what he would have been doing. And I think it's very similar, not just using the platform, but making sure we had the right set of ideas, the things that actually build the church and establish leaders and establish believers. So it's really wonderful. It's really exciting to be part of what God is doing. And we're doing the same kinds of things. It's not just connecting, but it's connecting in a way and around the ideas that really, really make a difference for the churches. We'll meet again on Wednesday night at 7. I probably won't be with you guys given the schedule that we have here, but Jonathan or Scott, Tom, Carl, the other guys that are there can handle that on Zoom again. So I appreciate you getting together to just catch up in the middle of the week and remain connected, but also to talk about and to be praying about things together. I'm also going to be with you on Thursday night. I believe that we'll be able to do that and finish up the series on spiritual beings that we began 6 weeks ago. So we'll be looking at the video on the new humanity. So watch that several times through the week. Tuesday you'll get the transcript and the study guide that I'll send out, and that'll give you time to prepare for our discussion on Thursday night, starting at 7 to 8:30. So we'll continue on with that. That'll finish up the spiritual being series, and feel free to bring other connecting thoughts from the previous series into that. But anybody is welcome to jump in on that who'd like to. And again, the link will go out via an email, and if you're not getting those from me, please let me know. We continue to use the platforms like Facebook and particularly YouTube for the posting of these videos. So these videos and previous teaching videos that I've done in the First Peter series, you'll see in a playlist. So if you go to the Grace Church Clifton YouTube page or channel, they call it, you'll look under playlists, and under playlists you'll see the playlist that these videos are being posted on. So we're going to start using this probably regularly from now on, where sermons, whether they're video and audio or one or both, will be able to be collected here, and you can go and see those and share them with others and watch them again. This time has just accelerated our understanding of how profitable and fruitful it is to use technology and move beyond our traditional ways of doing things without dropping the good things that are about that, like connecting and relating and discussing. So technology's not going to replace our community, but it's going to help strengthen our community. So that's what we're working on, and I hope and pray you'll continue to be just pursuing these things and trying to get the best of everything, given what we are. We're looking at the continuation of the series on First Peter, and the title is actually changed here, so I apologize for not changing it. I will when in the um, posting for this video in sort of the thumbnail uh, photo that's there, but um, really talking about the issue of holiness here, and probably title something like this, new purpose, new nature, or something of that nature. Because of the new purposing and the repurposing, we talked a lot last week about being pulled off the junk pile of the world and cleaned up and made for a new wonderful purpose back to our original purpose. Like taking something old that was once, I just drove by somebody's house here in Indiana this morning, and they had an old, probably 1930s, 1940s Chevy truck, dump truck that they were using as a flower planter, in their front yard. And I thought, wow, what if you restored that to its original beauty and shine and got it up and running? It's a classic car that we were worth thousands and thousands of dollars, and now it's being used to grow tomatoes and flowers out of the back of it, just because it's, you know, that's the kind of thing. It can be so much more, and God has done that for us, and we need to really grasp and understand and think and live like that. And Peter gets into that further into this section that we're looking at today. Just two more verses I'm following up on. I'm trying to keep these small because there's with our time constraints here, whether that be video or be on the short hour that we have to get together. I want to try to keep our thoughts focused and our purpose focused. But we're going to look at, again, we're following this design pattern that we have from the example of in the Bible Project here. And I want to continue to commend this to you as a way of just getting your mind around how Peter has written this letter, the various parts that make it up, even some background material. You can see here my cursor. You get some background on Simon Peter here. And, his real name is Simon, but Jesus renames him, the Rock, and Peter, and it comes from the Greek term for his name. A little bit of background on the letter itself, who it's written to, where Peter is. He's in Rome, writing to churches around Asia Minor, and his scribe Silvanus is really the one writing this. Peter's working with him and probably others in developing this for the purpose of the churches. And then we looked at the greeting a few weeks ago. We looked at the song of praise last week, or 2 weeks ago, I think. And then we began to work through this section last week on a new family identity. What Peter is doing now in this letter is helping these Gentile believers, these people who had come out of pagan backgrounds, not out of Jewish backgrounds, understand that they are now identified with the people of God. What's been true of Israel up to this point is now true of them because of what Christ has done, who was not only the Messiah to Israel, but is now Lord of the world. They've been brought into that, and Israel's story is now their story as well. And not only just the story from the Old Testament, but a new fulfilled story, a new fully developed and full covenant partnership that's available now because of what Jesus has done. And Peter invites them to understand that, especially in the midst of a world that is still thinking it's working in its old ways and working against them, working against God's purposes. But now they have been realigned together with what God has always intended to do through Israel, and has now brought into full flower in the coming of Jesus and the giving of his Spirit to go out into the world. And the world is still in conflict with it. But the message is going out that Jesus is its Lord, and that means he is creating a unique people in the world. Jesus is not only the Lord of the world, he is the Lord for the world. And therefore, those who line themselves up with him are also people with Jesus who are for the world. And that sets the tone for what we're talking about today, and that is this issue of holiness. That's where Peter goes in his identification of the family. We talked last week about a preparedness that develops in our heart and in our mind, that we now need to be ready to set out onto a journey for with God and for His purposes for the world, and that was laid out last week in verses 13 and 14 of chapter 1. And now we're identifying another layer or another connection that Peter is making with the ancient people of God in the Old Testament, that we're now a holy people in the wilderness. We're a people called out by God for a unique purpose, and just as they were wandering through the wilderness towards their promised future, the promised land, the calling that was true of them is also, and even more so, true of us because of what Jesus has happened. So that's what he lays out here. And again, a couple of verses that are easy to gloss over quickly if we're not careful and stop and think about. And that's what I'm hoping you'll do in watching this video and in our discussion together. Stop and really think about what it means to follow through on the calling and to think carefully together about the calling that these verses make. This was my summary from last week, that God's plans have all been leading up to Jesus and a future in Him which awaits us all who are His loyal followers. This is to be our orienting center, where our mind and attention is focused, and for which we have been taken out of the junk pile of the world and repurposed for that future, for God's future, in other words. That purpose has begun to show itself in the new family we have become in this new home. So we now find ourselves part of a new family, in a new home, with new responsibilities and new things to do, new tasks that we've been given. And At Home with God has been the title of this series, so we're continuing to try to fill in an understanding of that. But why is being holy something we should aspire to? And is it realistic? It's a word that has a lot of connotations and a lot of even edginess in today's world. Is it a good thing in today's world to desire to be holy? My sense is that it's thought of as a negative thing. But yet here we read in this passage that we'll see in a minute, that's what our calling is, and it's a high calling. So how are we to think about this? How are we to understand it? How are we to live it out in a way, particularly in a world that may not look favorable on the idea of personal or corporate holiness, whatever that is from their perspective, but we should certainly be clear on what it is from our perspective. So let's look at the Old Testament identification with this idea. This is at the end of a section in Leviticus, probably one of those books you curl up with in front of the fireplace all the time. I'm just kidding, I'm joking. It's probably the part where most people get into from the Bible and they say, wow, I'm not sure I can get through all this. If don't eat these foods, if you got mold in your house, you got to do that. If this happens to your cattle, this kind of stuff. So here is a section that's very, very difficult, but right in the middle of it, especially after instruction has been given about the food laws, we have this passage right here in Leviticus 11:44 to 45, and you can see Peter making a clear connection with it. But back then, in the first 5 books of the Bible, we have this: I am the Lord your God. He says this after telling them what kind of foods they should eat and not eat. You must consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy. So do not defile yourselves with any of these small animals that scurry around along the ground. For I, the Lord, am the one who brought you up from the land of Egypt, that I might be your God. Therefore you must be holy, because I am holy. I am completely unlike any of the other so-called gods of the nations, and I have taken a special attention to you and have a special purpose for you. And that works itself down into the kind of food you eat in relation to the food that others eat, or in relation to the way you live amongst yourselves and the way you do some daily activities. And this is a really defining aspect as to why the whole book of Leviticus is there, as well as all the other laws and seemingly strict rules and regulations. It's because they're identified with a God who is wholly and completely different from any other God, and unique from it, but definitely for the world, because this is the one God who created all that there is. And these are now the people of his covenant promises to work through them and remake that world back to its original restored and wonderful order. And so a key idea here that you see Peter pick up, and here it is, 1 Peter 1:15 to 16. But as he who called you is holy, just like we saw back in the Leviticus passage, you also be holy in all your conduct, your behavior. Since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. It's not a sense of holiness because that's just the best way to live. It's a sense of holiness because your primary identification, your primary solidarity is now with this God. I am your God and you are my people. I am holy, therefore you should be holy. I am set apart and different, not of the world, not like it, but definitely for it. And you'll see that explained in some of the video notes here in just a few minutes. Another version, that was the New Living Version, the ESV version below, these are the same passages but in different versions. But now you must be holy in everything you do, just as God who chose you is holy. For the scriptures say, you must be holy because I am holy. So here we have the idea of God choosing them, of God's purpose for them. Again, we talked about the idea of the choosing is not so they could be special people and be locked away over here, but the choosing is, I have a special purpose for you. So I choose you because I have a purpose for the many who I have not chosen yet. Chosenness is always a matter of a larger and a greater purpose. So it's not to claim a sense of superiority or we have a reason that we were chosen, but the reason still remains in the heart and mind of the one who chose them, so that others could be included as well. And hence Israel's choosing. Israel was always chosen to be a solution to the problem of Adam that had been brought into the world, so that others outside of the family of Abraham could be brought back into God's purposes too. So start to finish, that's what God is doing, and we need to think about these things in that light. A comment on this from the N.T. Wright's popular commentary, the Everyone series that he has. We've talked about this last week or previous to this in 13 and 14, that Peter describes the previous state before they knew Christ. Ignorance. You didn't know what you were made for, but now you do. Now you've been cleaned up for much finer use. Think about again that old truck that's got tomato plants planted in the back of it I saw this morning, what it would be if it would have been gloriously restored by someone who knew what they were doing and could bring it to that state. So be sure you live up to it. That means holiness, living up to the purpose for or the reason for which you have been chosen and restored. Being set apart for God in every part and in every level. This vocation will be reinforced as you look to the future, both to the glorious hope of what will happen when Jesus is personally revealed at last, verse 13 we saw last week, and to the coming judgment in which God will be the impartial judge of what everyone has done, verse 17, what we'll look at in the next installment of this. So this forms a very important bridge verse when we remember we live in between the times of Jesus' resurrection and Jesus' future, and our hope is set there. So because of our hope setting there and our identifying with Jesus in that future, holiness is what's needed, and the idea of being set apart for a special purpose, not just set apart, but set apart for a purpose. And it's also the bridge to the idea of the judgment that's yet to come. God is going to rid his world of the things that have corrupted it, and holiness goes with that idea. It's the idea of incorruptibility, of being purified, of defectiveness and brokenness being removed and never allowed to come back again. And so that also is part of our hope. Our holiness and our hope are tied together as well. It's not a sense of being a do-gooder or a sense of being better than others. It's a sense of, I want to live now and learn to live now. I'm in training to be one who has a glorious new hope and new life in the future. And if that calls for holiness, being set apart, not doing the things that others do or be a part of, simply because they won't be around in the future. Why would I participate in them now, or have those things be characteristic of me now? They won't belong in the future that I have because of Christ's resurrection and his second coming. Why would I engage in them now as if they were? And so it fits in naturally with the things that we've already talked about. I think next week we'll even reinforce it more. So what does it mean to be holy? What are we talking about practically? I'm not going to spell a lot of this out. These are the kinds of things that you need to think about and need to talk about in light of the things that I'm sharing with you now. But suffice it to say, it is an important thing to talk about and to think about. What are we talking about? What's this actually look like? And how do we go about it? What is it? What is it? What is it not? Those are the kinds of things I encourage you to talk about on Sunday, and to come away with some clear direction, even if it's just one thing or one, conviction that you form that says, this is, for me, this is what it means to be holy, that I need to be set apart. There are things in my life, or there are things that are going, or even things in my past that simply are hindering me from becoming the kind of person who reflects the future that God's going to bring about, and the nature of Christ and what he's done, the purpose for which I've been called. I need to get rid of that, or that needs to be removed or changed about me, and I haven't thought seriously or deeply enough about it. I would encourage you to go to the Bible Project website, bibleproject.com, or their YouTube channel, Bible Project. Just look up Bible Project and search for, in the playlists on spiritual themes, or themes, I think, the video on holiness. We looked at this in our Thursday night study, but go back and get a good comprehensive idea about what holiness is and is not. This is a very, very healthy way of thinking about it in a larger scheme of the Bible and its story. So I encourage you to go back and look at that holiness video. But I pulled it from the transcript, a helpful section at the very end that says, holiness is identified with God's presence, and the temple where God was, and how one could be purified in order to be in God's presence. And the statement that they make in the transcript goes like this: instead of becoming pure first and then going into the temple, here God's holiness comes out from the temple, making things pure, bringing them to life. What does it all mean? He's talking about the vision that Ezekiel has of God's rebuilt temple and a stream of water flowing out of it that changes the whole world around it. So we don't know until we meet this man Jesus, and he claims that he's fulfilling all of these ancient visions, but in surprising new ways. So Jesus, he went around touching people who were impure, people with skin diseases, a woman with chronic bleeding, or dead people, and when he touches them, their impurity should transfer over to Jesus, but instead, Jesus' purity transfers to them and actually heals their bodies. That's an important idea that Jesus makes a difference in. Jesus is like that holy coal in Isaiah's vision, and when you watch the video, you'll see that explained earlier. Right, and Jesus claimed that he was the human embodiment of God's own holiness, and that he and his followers were now God's temple, so that through them, God's holy presence would go out into the world and bring life and healing and hope. And so this is why Jesus described his followers as having streams of water, living living water flowing out of them. So this is our part of the story where we find ourselves now. But where is it all heading? The last pages of the Bible end with a final vision about God's holiness. This time it's by a guy named John. And in his vision, we see the whole world made completely new. The entire earth has become God's temple, and Ezekiel's river is there flowing out of God's presence, immersing all of creation, removing all impurity, and bringing everything back to life. Our idea of holiness needs to be planted into this understanding of how holiness works in God's world and works towards his ultimate purposes. So it's not a special status we attain. It is shaped by a purpose that we share that's been given to us by God's choosing of us for the sake of reaching others and bringing healing and restoration to his world. And that then requires us to think carefully about this and to allow it to shape our core identity of not only who we are, what we do, how we think, things like that. So I think there's some core ideas just to highlight. Being set apart and repurposed for a task is the right and prerogative of the new owner. Our God made known in Jesus in this case. We're his unique possession, and this defines us. We now have a new owner. We have a new master. We now have one who's bought us with great sacrifice to himself in the giving of Jesus, his death, resurrection, the cross, and the giving of his Spirit. So it's certainly God's right, if we declare and determine that we will be loyal to him, to make this call in our lives, to be repurposed for him. It goes with the reason that he's done those things and called us in the future that he has for us. And so it makes sense, first and foremost, if we call Jesus Lord and Savior, that we would want to be holy, we would want to be set apart, we would want to be made useful for him, knowing that that's also going to be the best possible use for our lives. We couldn't come up with a better use for our lives than the one he has given us and defined for us. So it's not something that's meant to crush us or to limit us. It's actually meant to give us a higher sense of purpose and connection with him. So that leads to the second point, and that is being set apart, go with the purpose of the Creator. And when I use the word set apart, I'm thinking about that as a primary way of thinking about holiness, being set apart for a purpose. There's no place for pride or a sense of superiority. It's not a status we share. God's holiness is a healing power which we share in and extend into a corrupted world. So we become part of the stream of life, of the life-giving purpose that God and healing purpose that God has for his world. So our holiness is something that's meant to not be held on to for our own sake, but actually be used and worked and purposed into the world so that it affects everything in the world around us. Each one of us become like that healing river flowing out of the new temple that Ezekiel saw. So how are you to think about being holy? How are you going to put this to work in your life? When, where, and how? I want you to talk about that in your simple meeting gatherings tomorrow morning at 10, for those of you who are gathering there on campus. And when we meet at 12 tomorrow, we'll talk about this in our Zoom at noon meeting. So I hope you'll just give some time to think about these questions. I will put a link to the holiness video that I mentioned up here so that you all can look down below this video on YouTube and click it. It'll take you right to it. I'll also be also in there, right underneath this video, include a link where you can get a copy of these slides too and be able to look at them and review them and have these questions in front of you as well. Okay, so my summary thought here, again, sorry about my spelling errors here. It's part of just being on the road, and I can correct it right here as I see it. Because we have been repurposed by God, we must fully embrace this new identity and purpose and let it shape all we think, feel, and do together. Let it shape. Holiness is a matter of thinking, feeling, and doing. It's everything that we are. It's a defining characteristic that unites us with our Lord, who is himself distinct and different from the world he created, but most definitely for it. Our world desperately needs holy people. We are called to be holy because the world needs holiness. God is holy. He wants holiness for his world. He wants the impurities removed. He wants it brought back to its original restored purpose. And so that need, we fall in between that, the need on the one hand of the world and the nature of the God who created it on the other, and we fill that gap. What a wonderful way to think about our life and our purpose together as individuals, as families, and as a church in light of the world that we're in. So I hope this will help you think carefully about that, and we'll talk about it tomorrow as well. So you guys have a great rest of the Saturday, and look forward to connecting with those of you on Zoom at noon tomorrow, and everyone who is meeting there on Sunday morning on campus. You guys have a great time together, and pray for one another, pray for us, pray for our world and this unique purpose that we share in God's purposes. So that's what we'll add today to the idea of being at home with God. And we'll continue to add on this in our series over the course of the weeks ahead. God bless you all, and again, so many thanks for your prayers and your help for us. Continue to pray for our family as we spend some time now here in Indiana this week with Mel's mom, getting some things done for her as winter sets in here, and just enjoying some time with family. I'll be leading that conference 4 days this week, getting up early in the morning, so appreciate your prayers for that, and praying for one another especially. And we miss you all back there, and look forward to getting settled back in at home in New Jersey towards the end of the week. So God bless, and talk to you soon.